Today on the show, we learn that the Star Wars writers really like feet. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and themes behind some of our favorite universes. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Jaden.
And today, boy, do we have a fun episode.
It was a shorter one, but I think it definitely helped us establish the new arc. This show does a great job of doing that, like little filler episodes before the action starts.
Yeah, and I would say this episode, too, has more stuff that happens rather than quotes. There are a lot of quotes that we wrote down, but I would think that it's just in general, the majority of stuff happened in this episode.
Absolutely.
So, like always, we're going to do a brief synopsis coverage. We're going to talk a little bit about it here and there. And then we're going to go a little bit more into detail, go with those quotes, go with those questions. You guys know the drill. We're going to go through all that stuff. But first, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping as per usual. We would love to hear from our listeners. You guys. So email us at podcast@loreparty.com with all your thoughts, questions, episode ideas, and all that stuff. You know, you might just hear it in a future episode.
You can find Kevin at In The Loop on Twitter and K-Loops on Twitch and Instagram.
And you can find Jaden on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. JadJ.
And of course, you can connect with the Lore Party team on Instagram, Twitter, and Twitch at lore_party.
Yeah. Now, before we dive in, we're going to take a quick break. Stick around, get some water. We'll be right back.
Okay, now that we've bowed down to the corporate overlords, it's time to begin our synopsis. We begin Cassian's awful, no good, very bad day with him being loaded onto a prison ship bound for Narkina 5. And the entire time he's protesting, he's like, but no, I'm just a tourist. Like, dude, that didn't work for the judge. Now you're trying to get it to work on some random trooper? No way. They get him on the ship and they even tell him to take his shoes off, which that'll become important later.
Feet, guys. There's a whole feet thing going on here. A lot of feet. First it was House of the Dragons, now it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
So we cut to our buddy Karn. We go back and forth a couple of times between Cassian and Karn, and then when Cassian takes his shoes off, we then cut to Karn's shoes, who still has shoes on. He's dealing with some Imperial involvement of his own, as he is all of a sudden summoned away from his job by the ISB and specifically Deidre. So he's in that room, you know, in his little weird circular cubicle. I know that sentence sounds weird, okay? Circular cubicle, whatever it is, his little thing. I don't know. It was, when I saw this scene, I definitely thought of exactly what you said about Futurama. It was pretty much an exact copy. So turns out Karn is making false reports, trying to get Andor's name into the system. It's really funny. Deidre calls him out and she's like, I see 5, and he goes 6, and she goes, I was not including this morning. Like, He's still doing it. And Deidre just pretty much, she's just like, why? What is your deal? Why do you keep doing this? And he says he never saw the report on what happened on Morlana 1 and with that whole team.
And Ferrix as well.
And Ferrix. So that's the big thing. He never saw the report, and she's like, you signed it. And he's just like, yeah, okay. Like, I was told to.
They told me to.
Yeah,
which it's so funny because like the Empire just keeps getting shown its own incompetence, and they don't ever acknowledge it. They're just like, oh yeah, that's pretty standard.
So while she's leaving the room, she decides to give him the report, tells her subordinates, give him the report. And they're like, oh, God, today of all days. And she's like, it's fine. We have time. And then she heads off to a very important meeting.
The meeting is in regards to what Deidre has dug up about the stolen star drive that Cassian had and what she thinks she's going to need to take this further, because she's identified someone that they had not known about until this point. They're calling him Axis, because Deidre thinks that this is the guy who is the key to uniting all of the rebel fronts. And that's very interesting.
Yeah, they see him as like the center of everything that's been going on.
Yep. Which they're not wrong.
So for you all to know, it's Luthen. Like, they kind of hint at that. It's Luthen. So there you go. So now Cassian arrives on Narkina 5, and he's introduced to the Warden, who is wearing these really weird orange-styled moon boots from, like, Arthur. Like, that's what...
I saw them and I went, oh, look, Skechers.
Yeah, I saw them and I thought the moon boots from Arthur, where he has to, like, jump, you know, they had, like, the little springs on them. That's what I looked at, and I was like, okay. So it turns out these boots prevent the guards from being shocked by a pulse in the floor. And he walks out and he's like, see, we don't have any weapons, and you're probably wondering why. Well, guess what? And then they all drop to the floor instantly.
Instantly. The best part about that is he goes, we appear to you unarmed. I was like, motherfucker, you've got stun batons on your shoulders. What do you mean? Or on your hips. What do you mean?
Yeah, they definitely have weapons. It's just they don't really need them.
I guess. So we cut back to Daedra, and she's returned after her meeting to Karn. And she's like, so, hey, what do you think of the report? And he gives it his old, 5th grade English teacher speech. He's like, this is terrible. There's nothing of substance in this report at all. And so then she asks him to, like, fill in the blanks, because the stuff that's left out of the report that would make, the former overseer look bad is not in there. So she's like, what's missing? And he gives her all the details and shows, like, hey, Cassian is a bigger deal than we were led to believe. And she's like, cool. And then she goes to leave, and I will say this, I'll give Karn some props. He immediately stands up and was like, hey, I didn't deserve what happened to me. I was doing my job, and I got fucked over. You should give me a chance to serve the Empire again. Which, I was not expecting that stance from him, to be honest. He growing a spine. Yeah.
Yeah, it felt a little bit individualistic from somebody who's kind of, the cog in the machine. That's kind of how it felt. So after this, Cassian is put into a prison uniform, and he's taken to his new home in this prison. Now, the entire time, it kind of seems like I don't want to say PTSD, but he definitely is having, like, an anxiety attack throughout this entire episode.
Yep.
They have this weird music in the background and kind of almost like a clock going, and like a little ring. It's like he's just clearly, like, not doing very well, and he, like, barely talks too in this episode.
And you gotta even wonder too, like, the facility that he's being taken into is such a sterile, clean environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've seen prison camps, Imperial prison camps before in Rogue One, where they're dirty, they're filthy, they're breaking rocks into smaller rocks and doing, like,
putting the rocks back together and then breaking them again.
Exactly, the normal prison shit. But then with this, this is like a clean room, everything's very sterile, everything's very controlled and precise.
There is a purpose.
And honestly, to say this, Cassian's probably not used to being in a place that's this sterile. This must be like a crazy environment for him to be in. He's used to the worn out grime and, like a lived in place like he's been staying at.
I mean, the last time he was somewhere that was really super sterile like this, at least what we have seen is, when he was a kid, when that ship crashed, he went on there and he was the dirtiest thing on the ship.
Yep.
So on this level, the guards are not in charge, but rather another prisoner is.
It's a very interesting setup.
Yeah, he gets dropped into a room where everybody's working on a table and they're building the same components over and over and over and over and over again all day long. And this prisoner walks up, and it's Emperor Snoke. And sorry. It's one by the other name, Kino Loy. That's right, played by Emperor
You're
Snoke.
not wrong, but also I hate you because I've seen so many theories being like, when are we going to see him turn into Snoke? And I'm like, stop it. No.
Oh my god. So Andy Serkis is playing Kino Loy, who is the inmate who's in charge of this whole floor.
He is the manager.
Yeah, he's the manager of, like, the room in the floor. He gives Cassian the rundown, kind of introduces him to his workmates, including a familiar face that we know named Melshi, who is in Rogue One.
He is leading some of the ground troops that we see. We see Andor calling him a bunch during the battle, where he's part of the ground forces that Andor manages to round up and get to go into the fight. So, I think it's kind of cool. We're going to see Rogue One is actually the name of the strike unit. So maybe we'll see more of those characters being added to Andor's crew as we go on.
It's pretty cool.
It's a nice little detail that I really liked. Just reusing Star Wars is so good at reusing actors or reusing characters and putting them in fun spots. So Kino, he tells Cassian the lay of the land. He tells him, this is very simple. You are going to be part of a team. They're going to be assembling parts. And you're actually you're competing. He goes, think of it as a game, as competition. You and your group have to build the most components in a 12-hour shift. Which by the 12-hour shift, that's brutal as hell.
It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, it's nasty. He goes, and so here's the thing. If you get first place, you get a prize. But if you get last place, you get fucking fried like he had been upstairs.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound fun.
Which I'm like, damn, that's not great. And the worst part is he's joining in the middle of a shift, and he's joining the table that was missing a man, so they're behind. They're gonna have to try to catch up.
They get a call, and it's like almost like a double time shift. They're in like a super fast now competition thing. They compete with the different rooms.
Yeah, they're competing with the other floors in the building as well.
So each table competes with all the tables in the room, and then the room competes with other rooms on the floor, and then the floor competes with other floors.
Yes.
It's very, very anime-esque.
It's a great way to control the prisoner psychologically because, they're going to start forming their own little cells around their tables, and they're not going to be thinking about, because the biggest problem with a prison escape is when all of them decide to turn. If you... The small number of guards couldn't possibly stop the thousands of prisoners that are in this building. But if those prisoners are focused on taking each other down, they're not going to be thinking about escape.
Yep. So after this, in stark contrast to this prison of slavery, we go to another prison. We cut to Mon Mothma and her husband hosting yet another party.
A prison of politics.
Yes, you'll see that theme. We talk about that later on. Take Holma arrives again and informs Mon that her accounts are being watched now and asks, how much is missing, which she replies 400,000, which is like, what? He's like, how much are we moving and how much is going to be? And she's like, 400,000. And he's like, what?
Yeah, that's stuff that's already out there that they could get caught with. That's a lot of money to just be floating in the ether.
Yeah. So she continues to entertain her guests and plays her role, as the fake do-gooder. And Tay leaves before Mon can say anything else.
Which, the way he leaves, too, is very interesting because it gave Mon Mothma she's worried because she just told him, hey, by the way, I just involved you in almost 500,000 credits being missing. And the Empire is cracking down on shit like that.
Yeah.
So, she's probably, in her head, she's probably thinking, oh, God, is he going to turn me in? Is he going to betray me?
Yep. And the other thing, too, is her husband is starting to look mad sus. Tim sus.
Yeah.
He starts staring at this guy.
I don't think he's thinking rebellion. I think he's just thinking that she's cheating on him.
That's what I'm saying. Tim sus.
Yeah, which, by the way, honestly, that might be good for him because that'll just be another story he can tell to the other housewives.
Ooh, got him.
We cut back to Cassian, who is finishing up his day, and we find out that his team lost on their floor, so he got zapped. So, and one of the prisoners, he was like, it was rough getting zapped twice in one day. And, he's like tired. He's standing in line with the other prisoners, and he notices one of the prisoners is like sign languaging to other prisoners in line on a different part of the section.
Yeah, like a whole other floor or whatever.
Yeah.
They're in line first, and they do this weird thing, and then they go to their cells, and then they I
think it's a head count. I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, but they can see the other floors through panes of glass, and so they're signaling to each other, telling each other the news of the day or whatever, which is it's so, their whole idea of, hey, we're going to turn the floors against each other doesn't seem to be working because they have a little bit of unit cohesion at least. They've come up with this whole sign language to speak to one another. Anyways, they get him through the head count. They get into their barracks, and we find out where Cassian is supposed to, call home for the next 6 years. He doesn't, because he'll be dead in 5.
Whoa. Spoiler, man. Whoa.
Gee, oh no. Did you know that Darth Vader dies at the end of Star Wars?
Come on, man. What are you doing?
I know, I'm a stinker. Anyways, they're not bad conditions that he finds himself in. He's got water. He's got a cot, his own, little semi-private room. No one else is allowed to step inside of his cell while he's in there, otherwise they'll get zapped.
He's got a foldable toilet. Nobody's going to take his toilet paper.
No one's going to take his toilet paper. And he actually gets all the food that he wants. Although something very interesting, it's just like a bland paste that gets pumped out through a tube. And apparently, if your team wins that day, you get taste. And if your floor wins, you get flavor. Just once again, that sense of control, trying to encourage you to work by taking away everything except for food is very important. Food is...
I would like to know...
You want to know what it tastes like, don't you?
Yeah, I want to know what's the difference between your taste and flavor. What does it taste like when you have taste? And then what kind of flavor? Do you get to choose the flavor? What is it?
Well, what I'm wondering too is what if they pump in spicy flavor and you're not a spicy person? It's I worked so fucking hard and now I my mouth just burns.
Ooh, that would... Or like fish?
Oh yeah, just like a
fish.
bad. Although honestly, a couple of months in that place, you'd probably be happy for bad taste. It would be at least something to talk about.
They didn't say good flavor,
No, yeah. While they're going over this stuff, all the other prisoners kind of gather around him, and they're like, "Hey, man, what do you know about this lockdown that's happening?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" And it turns out that because of the Aldani robbery, every single prisoner that he is now sharing a cell with had their prison sentences doubled overnight. And so he's pretending I don't know anything. I don't know what's going on out there. And they're like, wow, he doesn't really know. And it's like, man, if they found out that he's the reason that none of them get to leave and see their families again for double what they were doing, they'd probably kill him.
I could see that.
He kind of settles in, he gets in. There's a really cool transition.
Before we know it, 30 days pass. I personally didn't see the number on the screen because he has a screen in his cell that says how many days. I saw one guy had less than 100 days. I saw a couple of screens that were really, really different. And his was, I didn't see it change.
Yeah, so it did. You were right. I didn't think it did either. So I went back and rewatched it. It did change, but it was such a subtle, small change. That's why I think they put up the 30 cycles later graphic on there.
Gotcha. I also noticed that it was actual numeric, we could read it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think if I go back and watch, I gotta go back and watch A New Hope because they have the number counter when they're on the trench run. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if that counted down numbers. I'm pretty sure it did. I don't know if Lucas made up his own space number system as well. I don't think he did.
Well, anyway, he's been there for a while now, and he's done pretty well to contribute to his team.
Yeah, he seems to have. He seems to slot in, and is not doing too bad. I think he's accepted that, for now at least, he's got to blend in and try to go along with what's happening.
Yep.
Back on Ferrix, however, we see that life is kind of picking up the way it was, only with one small hitch. The Empire is directly on the planet. And we also see that Marva is being true to her word. She is getting in a little trouble. Bix even has to counsel her to be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it turns out she's spying for the rebellion, trying to figure out how to get them into the hotel to blow it up.
She's a badass, and she has a cold.
Yep, and she's killing herself doing this.
Yeah,
and everyone keeps asking where is Cassian? Where is Cassian? And no one seems to know. Not even Cintas and Vel, who are on Ferrix now, spying on Marva and having a little bit of I almost said marital spout, but we don't know what their relationship status is. So,
Well, the big thing is they're looking for Cassian and they're annoyed because nobody knows where the hell he is.
yeah, and that it's hurting their relationship. It's definitely a strain.
So we see Bix go to her father to contact Luthen, and then we go and see Luthen, and Luthen realizes that contacting Andor in person was kind of a mistake.
Yeah, he overplayed his hand a lot. Like
Yeah.
his whole thing is hiding in the shadows, but he was like, I need this Ferrex job to work, so I need to personally go get this guy.
He was fairly desperate, I believe.
Yeah. Because he was tired of Mon Mothma's being so slow about the organization.
Yep. And he seems a bit distracted, too. And his assistant is like, hey, dude, like I have some quotes later, but she's pretty much like calling him out, like, we're shutting this down. Like, Ferrex is done. We're not doing this anymore. And he's like, yeah, but his mom is sick. And it's like, bro, now you care about this guy? He's like, well, I mean, his mom is sick.
I think it's more like, oh, we can get him using his mom. And
I don't know. It felt more like his mom's sick, though. Like, I don't know. I think he kind of felt for him. I don't know. That's how I interpreted it, but maybe I'm wrong. So they decide to cut Ferrex off.
Yep.
And the next day, Bix's father disappears. He gets arrested and brought to the hotel. And the whole thing is when you get brought to the hotel, you're not seen again.
You don't leave. At least that's how it's been lately.
Yeah, so she's on the street with Brasso, and they're part of a crowd that is watching all these stormtroopers and Imperials walk around, gathering people up. She sees the fact that her father got arrested, so she's like, what's going on? And then they see her and yell her name and start chasing her. Funny, Brasso just like stands there and gets in the way and just puts his hands up and is like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
yeah,
I'm
sorry about that, fellas. I didn't mean to be in your
Oh.
way.
It's great. She's running down the street, but ultimately, no. Doesn't work too well.
We don't see it, but she gets captured.
Yeah.
But we do see Luthen flying to a meeting on a planet called Segramilo. And he's meeting with our good friend, Forrest Whitaker, a.k.a. Saw Gerrera. I was like, oh, fuck yeah. I love Saw Gerrera.
I love Forrest Whitaker, so that's,
yeah.
I mean, hey, there you go.
I still think they did him dirty in Rogue One. Now knowing more of his backstory, I'm kind of sad that they killed him the way they did. Because apparently in early drafts of Rogue One, he was going to be on Scarif fighting with everyone else, and I would have liked to have seen that.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, having him go down in a last stand would have been great. Luthen and Saw, they clearly know each other, and it's kind of cool. This shows how fractured the rebellion is because they both accuse each other of pulling off the Aldhani heist. Saw's like, "Oh, you did a great job with that Aldhani heist," and Luthen's like, "Oh, I thought that was you." Like, he doesn't reveal it. Like, this is how much the rebellion is in its infancy. They don't trust each other.
Yeah.
They are not unified. And Luthen even goes further, and he's like, hey, what if you meet with this guy that I know who's planning on attacking this facility? He needs air support. He doesn't have the ships. You have the ships. And Saw, I'm sure it's going to be in the quotes, but he lists off all of the like fractured rebel groups out there, and he's like, no, none of these guys are lined up, none of them are linked. Like, I have no reason to fight for these guys because there's no unified voice.
Yeah, remember in the earlier episodes we talked about how we wanted to see these groups and organizations interacting, how they would. Well, now we're actually really seeing it. Now we're seeing how they don't really like each other. They all have this vision of their way or the highway, and, Saw Gerrera is just like, they're lost. I'm the only one with the true vision. And there's a whole argument there where he's just like, Luthen's like, hey, man, we're not going to be able to get to this ending that we want with all of us not working together.
And the weird thing is, Saw's kind of cool with it, to be honest. Like, Saw's even like he's like, so you're going to meet with the guy? And Saw's like, not for that price. I'm not doing it. Not for you.
Even for free. That's the thing. It's a free.
Yeah.
And he's like, nah, homie. Nah. So after this, we go see Bix, and she is captured. She's at the hotel. Deirdre is like, got her dad in the room, and she says, leave him in the room. I want her to see him. And then they bring Bix in. She sees her dad, and Deidre just turns to the same guy who's like, "What are you doing? Get him out of here."
Yep.
And then they pick her, psychological tactics and all that. They pick him up, bring him out of the room. They sit her down on the same exact chair, and then that's the end of the scene.
And it immediately cuts to a great shot of Cassian and his team slaving away with, like, there's just no hope. Like, this episode ends with no hope, and that's a great way to just wrap up this kind of bleak episode.
It's pretty depressing. We'll get into it here in a bit. But before we do, we're going to take a quick break. All right, so we're back. So, Jaden, overall thoughts. What do you think you liked about this episode? What do you think you didn't really like about this episode? Give me something. Let's go.
No, I think this episode is a great build-up. I feel like I only have positive things to say about Andor, which I should come up with some negatives so that people don't think I'm biased.
It only comes out every week. I want more.
Yeah, I know, right? That's how dare they. I think this was a good episode. It was a little slow, I think.
Yeah.
In terms of action, but like that's what I think makes the show good, is that it steps out from the usual Star Wars formula of explosions every 10 minutes. Let's do fun action sets. Hey, that's great, but like let's try a more deep and rich story.
Yeah, one of my buddies had said something to me recently how he wasn't too crazy about Andor because for him Star Wars is like Jedis and all that stuff. And I tried to explain it to him, and I was like, hey, Star Wars, to me, at least, is more than that. And there's a lot going on. They're fighting oppression, all sorts of stuff. And he was like, oh, that's actually a really cool way of, looking at that. I'm going to watch Andor now, and I'm going to kind of have an open mind about that.
Yep.
And I told him it was kind of Game of Thrones-y, drama-y, that kind of stuff. I liked this. I liked this episode. I liked this show because I think this specific episode, right? It felt like I was in the Star Wars universe, but other stuff happens in this universe, not just Jedi and ships, So,
oh yes,
it's interesting. I feel like this show has shown us so much of an immersive aspect because it's showing multiple different aspects of the universe, right? And it's just really cool. I think the prison was great. I loved the aesthetic of the prison, of how, the colors were kind of drawn out. Everything was washed out. Now, not washed out with a filter, but everything was white. And so it washed everybody out, the lighting washed them out. And it made you really feel like you were just part of a cog in a machine. They were literally building giant cog-like things as well.
Exactly.
So they were just another
vibes.
statistic. Yeah, they're just another statistic, and I liked that. As well as I liked the comparison with Mom Mothma, because she's in a prison, but she's in a different type of prison. Not a prison of, walls, but of a prison of, one, her mind, because she can't really get out and, show who she really is. As well as she's in a prison in her own home. Her husband is a piece of shit.
They even mention in one of the conversations, hey, you should look at this view. And it's this is literally a bird in a cage here.
Yeah, that's what it was. And her husband, we find out that they got married really young. And that's the custom on their planet. And they got married before she even moved to Coruscant, as a representative.
16 years old, I think. It was 15 or 15.
Yeah, so they've been together for a while. They've known each other for a while. I don't know if it was an arranged marriage or not, but clearly they've been together for quite some time.
It feels pretty arranged.
Yeah, it definitely does. But clearly they've been together for some time, and he's a piece of shit. You can't trust him. It's one of those things where I'm like, wow, that sucks. You've been with him for so long, and you've never been able to trust him. You've never been able to actually be yourself around this person that you have been forced to be around. It's just, she's in a prison of her own. And so I really liked that. I thought the thing with Luthen also kind of in his own prison as well, hiding in the shadows. That's something I'll get into in the quotes. But I feel like the theme here was everybody was in their own type of prison. Cassian, a physical prison. And everybody else, like, either the prison of the shadows, prison of their mind, prison in their own house, like stuff like that. I mean, even Ferrix. Ferrix is a prison planet now, if anything.
Yep.
So there's just a lot going on, and I just think the episode did a really good job of kind of giving us a little bit of a peek within the window of those prisons.
And I want to say something real quick about the character of Daedra. I really, really like that character. We're kind of transitioning into quotes a little bit here, but I want to read a quote that the actress Denise Go said at an event, talking about how like the progression of the character. They said, she says, Tony wrote the first scenes for us to cheer for Daedra, but in the end, you don't do it anymore. She's not just a woman in a man's world, but a fascist in a world of fascists. It is important to see that power corrodes women as much as men. And I was like, damn, that's absolutely what's happening here. Yeah. She's now in power, and she's just doing the exact same shit that every other Imperial does.
Yeah.
I was like, that's awesome. God, the writing is so fucking good.
It's really good. And I will say I've seen online some people like being like, what's Andor? And I'm like, come on, you are missing out. This show is the bee's knees. All right. I am totally obsessed. I mean, I get obsessed with a lot of shows that I watch in general, but this one, not just because we're doing this show ourselves, but I have been like really been like, I mean, we text like all the time now. I'm like, what do you think's gonna happen? I want to see this. Like, It's just, I love this thing. Like, this is such a different pace for Star Wars, and yeah.
I was gonna say, there's a difference between liking a show and just doing reviews for the podcast. See my attitude on the Halo show.
All right, so let's get into some quotes here.
Yes.
Some of these are really short, some of these are a little long. So the first one is Karn, and when he gets that report, it's when Daedra says, you signed it. And he turns and says, I was given no choice. The cracks and the broken system, if you will, they're starting to shed some ugly light. They're shedding their ugly head. The use of fear and power, right? That's what the Empire has. But it's also causing problems within the Empire, within their own, like, people, right? We didn't get the full report. The report was not done correctly because the guy who was involved in the actual situation was intimidated. They used fear and intimidation to just push their own agenda, and we don't know what actually happened. At least they don't know what actually happened. They're covering it up, all this shit. So that fear and intimidation, it might work for, like, controlling people and all that other shit, but it's also, like, causing some problems.
No, I absolutely agree with that. Everything you just said there.
The next one is when Daedra is in that meeting. She kind of gets countered with her whole argument about Cassian by the commanding officer saying, like, this is expensive. There's a lot of stuff going on here that you want us to use, a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of time. And she rebuttals this out of order, if you will. She just blurts out, it's a fraction of the price of lost technology. She sees the importance of how the little things, this little box, for instance, that we recovered, it can snowball into a bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, she's the only one that seems to understand that there is a bigger threat out there. They all think that it's, there is nothing. She's got the eyes on the prize, which is interesting because then she runs into Karn, who has a very similar attitude to this. He says, the next quote is about him. He says, I was a good deputy inspector. I was very good. I solved the double murder and found the killer in 2 days. I was overly ambitious, yes. But time was slipping away, and the opportunity was real. Service to the Empire, you just said it. Can one ever be too aggressive in preserving order? I didn't deserve what happened. I'll tell you right now, that sentence right there, I was like, he's lost redemption in my eyes, where he's like I thought, like, ooh, maybe they're going to do like a him turning to the rebels kind of thing, but I'm like, yeesh, that's a pretty fascist thing to say, man. Can one ever be too aggressive in preserving order? That's pretty fascist.
Think about it. I feel like he's pretty young, right? He seems to be younger than Cassian, at least when I look at him.
The age of the characters is a little in question because like the books and stuff said Cassian was like 21 in Rogue One, and I'm like, that's not true.
Also, I know in the last episode I said Sybil, but it's actually Cyril is his name. But I feel like Cyril was raised in the Empire, right? Like, that's, I feel like, all he knows. And so I think the whole order thing has been ingrained in him, not just by political propaganda, but his mom. You looked at her house, right? Like, it was all order. He had 3 toys and that's it. Like, everything was pristine. She's about his, collar being pressed and tailored. She doesn't like that, but to him, that's order and taking care of it. To her, that is desperate. That's, you're putting your own personalization into it. I mean, people commented on his uniform earlier in the first episode, like, did you have it tailored? He's like, yes, I had it tailored. I did this. Like, he wants to
be important,
be part of a cog. Yeah, he wants to have the order part, but he's also kind of showing some individuality as well by doing those things because he's standing out. I think that actually shows a really good, just like, internal mindset for him. Like, he wants to fit in and he wants to really fit in that puzzle piece the best way he can, but by doing the things he's doing, he's standing out. And that can be dangerous in the Empire. We've seen what happened with Deirdre. Like, they're saying, like, her officers are telling her, like, hey, watch your back. Like, you're supposed to just be in the corner and be quiet, but now you're stirring up all this shit and you're, standing out. And I think it's the same thing with him. So him doing this and turning up and, standing up and saying these things, she kind of turns and looks at him. And here's what I noticed when she looks at him. She doesn't necessarily shut him down.
No.
Where, like, she says stuff that shuts him down, but the look she gives him is like, yo, I get you. I'm in the same boat. Now, the next conversation we have is when Cassian shows up at the prison. He's getting the rundown of the floor, the tables, the room, all that shit. And what's really, really cool, I thought this quote was really cool because the way it's explained to him, Kino just owns the room, right? Kino looks at him and says, this is like one of the last things he says to him before he gets him to his table, and he says, the point of this conversation is that you understand one thing most clearly. I have 249 days left of my sentence. I have a free hand in how I run this room. I'm used to being in the top 3 on this level. You will want to keep that happening. I'm sensing you understand me. Sick, injured, you talk to me. Problems with another inmate, I'll know before you do. Losing hope, your mind, keep it to yourself. Don't ever slow up my line. This guy has a lot of power in this room. He has free control of the room. He is the prison guard. And what better way to have a prison guard be an inmate? The inmate that wants to get out so badly that he will do anything to make sure productivity in this room is, like, top tier.
Yeah, and I mean, there's even a scene later where he's like, come on, guys, you're almost ahead. It'd be a shame for you to waste this opportunity. And it's like, this dude, he doesn't give a shit about them. He cares about himself. He knows that his job is to get them out of here.
Yup. He just wants to leave. And his sentence was probably tripled as well.
Yeah. I was thinking about that when I was watching. Yeah, when I was watching the episode, like, everybody got theirs doubled. Like, his got doubled too. So he was close, man. He was very close.
He was very close. Less than half a year he would have been out. And now he's stuck for almost a full year. So the next quote, this is at the party. We have Mon Mothma's husband. He says, well, good luck at feeding the galaxy. I'm off to feed myself. And, oh man, this is great. Tay Kolma says, charity begins at home. Burn.
It was so great.
Dude, the look her husband gives him, he's just like, are you fucking kidding me? And just like stares at her and him. And it was great. And I loved it. But anyway, okay, aside from that, another quote from this party. It's a whole conversation with Mon Mothma and a bunch of other senators. So I'm just going to read it, and I'll tell you when Mon Mothma says something compared to everybody else. So we have these senators, and they're talking about Palpatine, and they're talking about PORD, P-O-R-D, which is the legislation that was made that increased everybody's sentences, and just like, why Cassian, who didn't do anything, went to jail for no reason. Palpatine's frustrating, yes, we agree. Too easily provoked, yes. Overreactive, but... Another one says, understatement. Says what he means. We're discussing legislation, not speeches. Mon Mothma says, what does he mean? What is public order? It's an awfully big box, isn't it? The Emperor's primary charge is to protect us, is it not? And that's what the PORD legislation will do. And Mon Mothma says, how much protection is enough? We know what too little looks like. Surveillance and prosecution without limit? If you're doing nothing wrong, what is there to fear? Mon Mothma then says, well, I'm fearing your definition of wrong. Another senator says, these are dangerous times. And she says, dangerous times? Are they not? Do you feel under threat, Mon Mothma says? And the senator who's clearly been the one who's the hardest to convince, he ends the conversation by saying, personally here? Yes. I'm at great risk of ingesting too much of this nourishing Chandrillian hospitality. Let's talk about how these senators are still all over the place with government outreach. You can see how one side has been using fear and control, that kind of legislation, and just how they vote and everything, and their own reasoning. And I think, Mon Mothma does a great job of asking what they are afraid of, while the one who deflects at the end, he either doesn't know or he just doesn't care. That's the whole thing. Like, real world comparisons aside,
yep.
The whole if you have nothing wrong, if you didn't do anything, what do you have to fear? It's like, I shouldn't have to fucking do anything wrong or right. You leave me the fuck alone. Like, the overreach here is really grotesque and intense. And the quote where she says, I'm fearing your definition of wrong, because everybody has their own definition of wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, that's the whole point. Language is important here, as it is everywhere. And I think she raises the best questions. You might think something's wrong. These guys might think it's fine. Who are you to say that, now they need to go to jail?
It's a very good point.
Now, the next quote is in the prison, right? When they're all talking in the cell area on the hallway, Melshi just kind of looks at Cassian after everybody realizes he doesn't know what the PORD thing is. He looks at him and just kind of I don't want to say gets in his face, but he's gets really serious and he's like, hey, here's the deal. And when he does this,
Kino's not happy with him.
Yeah, he is really pissed. Don't ever look at the number. Double, triple, it doesn't matter. You're here till they don't want you.
Yep.
Get straight with that. Getting out now is dreaming. Those days are over. Melshi spitting the truth.
Absolutely.
You are a cog. You're nothing to them. A part that can be replaced. Cassian replaced another guy. He was just another piece of the puzzle. They just, got a new part, and it's him.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to the guy Cassian's replacing. They never say. He could be dead. He's probably dead.
We do see one scene that we kind of, mushed over. Some guy does commit suicide in that cell block. When the lights turn red on the floor, everybody has to be off into their cell. Otherwise, basically, they die. And we see some guy commit suicide, and everybody's like, oh, damn, now we gotta have to smell him, and we're gonna have to lose somebody at a table. And, it's a whole thing. Everybody's pissed about productivity rather than, their friend killed himself. You know what I mean? And I think that's another thing with the quote saying, if you have mental problems, if you're upset, keep it to yourself. I don't know. I feel like if a whole team of people are doing okay, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're more likely to be more productive. But that also keeps everybody from communicating properly, right? So I think the whole point of you're just another cog. They don't give a shit about you. Your number means nothing. You're never getting out. You're fucked, dude. You're gonna do this till the day you die, and that's it. And I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's right.
Absolutely.
So now we have a couple quick quotes here as well. After this one, we have one from Marva. She says, "My mother was a whiner, and that will kill you." I mean, that's a good mentality to have, especially in a rebellion kind of mindset. Like, stop complaining, just deal with your problem. Get it over with.
Just deal with your stuff, man.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty quick, straight to the point. Just go. The other quote is Cinta talking to Vel, and she just says, "Well, maybe I'm a rich girl running away from her family." Vel just kind of looks at her and is like, that's hey man, that's a little much. And, we got a backstory there possibly, And she continues to talk because they're arguing about like their love and then like what they're doing here. And she tells Vel, she goes, "I'm a mirror, Vel. You love me because I show you what you need to see." There seems to be more to their relationship than we thought, right? It's not just like two people madly in love. There's a lot going on there. She knows her backstory. She's like, "Hey, I just tell you what you want to hear, and you like that, so I do that to pretty much, placate you."
Exactly. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and Vel's clearly, like, bummed out about it, which, hey, the truth hurts. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
The other one is Clea talking with Luthen, and she's like, "Hey, man, I'm thinking clearly and you're not." Because the whole thing is she wants to shut down Ferrix, and she's like, "Dude, like, you messed up, and you are slipping." And Luthen does not like this. He says, "I'm not slipping, Clea. I've just been hiding for too long." And that's his prison kind of thing, right? Like, he's been hiding for so long, and he's just like, I think it's, the biggest thing is he's feeling like he can break free, but it is starting to cause him problems, right?
Yep, exactly.
Like, he did so well because he was in the shadows, whereas now he's not hiding. He's said this multiple times in other episodes where he's like, "We're not hiding. We don't have to hide anymore." And it's caused now some problems for him.
So now we're going to get to the quotes that I really love. I love the entire conversation between Luthen and Saw, and I don't want to... I wrote it. I'm not going to say all of it because the entire thing is quotable, in my opinion. But the one I liked the beginning was, "Whatever our final chance of success looks like, there's no chance any of us can make it real on our own. We need the Empire to help. We need them angry. We need them coming down hard. Oppression breeds rebellion." It's kind of crazy because he's right,
Oh yeah, totally.
Right now the Empire is just the foot's not on the neck. It's on the neck, but it's not applying pressure. Everyone's just kind of chilling, It's like they're in this weird. They're not free, but they're not enslaved. And Luthen needs them to realize just how bad the Empire can be before, that things can get moving. And it's just really cool. The fear and oppression is the greatest weapon that they can use against the Empire because it's the only card they have to play. And and then we get to learn a little bit more about Luthen himself. Saw asks him, "What are you, Luthen?" He lists off all of these other different people who are fighting the Empire. Like, that guy's a separatist. That guy's a human first. That guy is anarchist. Like, what are you, Luthen? I've never really known. What are you? And Luthen just fires back, "I'm a coward. I'm a man who's terrified that the Emperor's power will grow to a point beyond where we can do anything to stop it. I'm the one who says we'll die with nothing if we don't put aside our petty differences." He's right. He's 1,000% right.
He's 100% right. It's all the infighting.
His only fear is that that there's nothing he can do. And I love that. That's so cool.
And he's doing everything he can. He's trying to bridge the gaps.
He's got the money, he just needs the people.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, the whole fear and oppression thing is the Empire's greatest asset, if you will, right? But now it could also be used against them as their greatest deficit. Like, they are going to cause a rebellion by being too oppressive. And I think Luthen being terrified himself, like, think about that.
Yep.
He's scared. It's worked. He's terrified.
He's seen so much in control in every episode we've seen him in, but now we're seeing a more vulnerable side of him.
Yeah. I loved it. I thought it was a great scene. So, questions. Do we have any questions about what's up next?
I mean, listen, you're going to get into Jaden's really nerdy thing. I thought it was very interesting that that Saw Gerrera's group has X-Wings already, because in Rebels, they didn't get X-Wings till like the last season. And I'm like, has the Incom company changed sides a little earlier than we thought, maybe? Are these early versions? Maybe it wasn't a T-65. Maybe it was like a T-62 or something, like an earlier version of the X-Wing.
My questions were not as nerdy. My questions are more just like, who the fuck is Luthen still?
That's fair.
Like that, like, I just still like,
fair
I want to know
enough.
what's
Leave
up.
me out to dry with my weird questions.
I mean, I'm curious about that. Like, the little detail things are pretty interesting. I'm very curious about, like, what's up with Luthen still. I want to know how he knows Saw. I want to know, like, what is his relationship? How did it start? That kind of stuff with these people. I want to know what they are building. Like, I want to know, what has Cassian been working on? What are these little things that they're, putting together?
If I had to guess, components for the Death Star.
I would say yes, but how fucked up would it be if these were components that they keep putting together over and over again, and when they put it in, like, wherever they go to, like, take it, there's an automated machine that just takes it apart and then gives them the same parts over and over again. And that's just to keep them busy.
I mean, please no, that would be terrible for them. That would suck.
Oh, yeah, it's all about control, though. I mean, I'm just saying, I think that'd be totally fucked up, but it's an Empire thing, Like, I feel like that's something they would do. Your silence makes me scared.
I'm just thinking about the evil things that the Empire could be doing psychologically. What are they, vault tech now?
Oh, God. Hey, they're in a vault, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. So, final thoughts. What do you think?
I would say that I think this episode had a theme of being stuck, right?
Yep.
Stuck in your own prison. Like I've said, how the prison is just another cog. Like, that's the thing. All their prisons are just another cog in the societal machine, including Luthen's, and including Vel's, right?
Yep.
In this episode, we see two major prisons, I would say, like Cassian and Mon Mothma's, but also, like I said, Vel's prison, of who she is, trying to escape being the rich girl, I guess. Luthen's, of being terrified and hiding in the shadows. Ferrix itself as a planet. Hell, even Karn. Karn is in a different role. He's a puzzle piece that doesn't fit. He just fits, but he's missing something, right? There's something there. It's like putting, the square in the circle. He's fitting in that hole, but there's gaps, right? And so he's trying to fill those gaps, and he wants to be useful, and I think this is him doing the same thing, coming out of his shell. And Deidre, everybody, if you look at this whole episode, everybody is stuck in some way. I'm not saying they've necessarily escaped, but they're starting to. Like, they're doing something at least. And I think the only two that haven't is Mon Mothma and Cassian.
Absolutely.
What about you? What do you think?
I mean, you echoing everything that I've said. I think that this is going to be set up for next episode. I've already seen a little bit of a teaser for it. I'm very excited to see Cassian's maybe beginning to get out of the prison. I think in a trailer that we saw, there's a bunch of guys running in prison outfits, and I'm like, ooh, how are we going to get out of here? And with that, guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at lore_party. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next one.